Hello, folks. Dr. Jim, reaching out to my EDCI 708 Charlotte crew. Good morning. It's week 4. And a brief video to talk about the readings for this week, your assignments and discussion boards for the week, and some thoughts about feedback and mentoring. You are to read Earl. You should be reading this and responding to the discussion boards, but also we talked in our first face-to-face session about leading learning from Lorna Earl. And if you did not remember, here is the schedule of assigned chapters. During session 2 on February 15th, we will create a rubric for a 30-minute in-class activity designed to clarify learning, take it further, extend learning. At any rate, we'll talk more about the expectations and what that should look like on our second meeting. And on the third meeting, either on March 21st or 22nd, probably whether you have an early chapter or a late chapter, we'll present those in-class activities. So you're going to be leading learning on Earl in weekend 3. And there's your assignments if you hadn't remembered what they were. In addition to Earl, chapters 4 through 6 this week, you should be reading Tepper and Flynn. And I've just gotten my copy of Tepper and Flynn, and I'm starting to really appreciate the strategies that are suggested here. And I can see a whole lot of these strategies being applied to your leadership of the curriculum development project. You know, it's not just designing the curriculum and handing it off to someone, but it is working with that team or other individual who's delivering the CDP lesson to analyze the work. If you don't get it, you need to revisit the rubric and understand that you are to observe and to provide feedback on that lesson as it is progressing. So either make arrangements so that you can observe it live, or get videotape so that you can watch it with the partner who's implementing the lesson. Anyway, the CDP, I'm getting ahead of myself here just a little bit, but chapter 4 in Tepper and Flynn is all about determining the effectiveness of instruction and the teacher's impact on learning. That is that big chunk in the center of your CDP part B. How are you providing feedback and helping the teacher or team understand what children are learning? Certainly there should be a midpoint or a summative evaluation at the end, an assessment that tells you what children are learning. But what else can you glean from that conversation about your observation and the feedback that you're providing to others? So that's the discussion board that goes with Flynn, Tepper and Flynn. And for Earl, your assignment here is to talk about some mentoring that you've done. Now, serve as a mentor for one or more teachers, could be part of your work of the PLC or the CDP. I don't want you to make too much of this, and if you have never been a mentor, formal mentor for someone else, I'm thinking more about the kind of informal mentoring that I hope that you do daily as part of your job. For instance, I'm not a formal mentor, but I have 2 student teachers under my tutelage right now. And last week, I got engaged with one of these student teachers about the lesson that she was teaching on fractions. We're in 3rd grade, and fractions are tough for her kids. So I was observing her. The lesson, again, was on equivalent fractions. We had a conversation afterwards about how she was measuring mastery, just exactly what she wanted the children to know or to be able to do. What was her learning target? We talked about what went before the lesson that I hadn't seen that she had previously presented about fractions, and where she was going with this. We talked about some different instructional strategies she was using and some things that might have worked. I'm not an elementary guy, but I know enough that we talked about, I think they're called Cuisinart cubes, the little strings of cubes that you put together and you can take apart and talk about part and whole and fractions. We talked about pizza cutouts and how pizza is a way for some kids to understand fractions. So we had a conversation about what she was teaching, what went before, how she was going to assess what the children were learning. And I was acting as a mentor, as someone with a little more experience, sharing my ideas and bouncing back and forth. You are doing this now. Don't go out and do something new, but try to tap a relationship that you have right now with a teacher on your team, in your school, and talk about it, please. What kind of misconceptions did students have when they were thinking about fractions? Why are they mixing up the numerator and denominator? Why are they not understanding part and whole? The more we have these conversations, the better teachers can understand what children are thinking and how they might help them be more successful. Okay, that's the discussion board for Earl, chapters 4 through 6, be a mentor to someone. For Tepper and Flynn, you should be talking about how you might be determining effectiveness in the lesson that's being taught for the CDP. You will not see this discussion board. I figured 3 was plenty for this week, and I closed this discussion on standards. So you should be reading about standards. There's no discussion board this week on standards. And this discussion board I didn't close, thought about it. It is hopefully something that you can wrap into your PLCPB, provide an update on how your action plan for your PLCP is going. Do you have the data that you need to determine the effectiveness of these action steps? What can you celebrate? What frustrations have you experienced? So support your explanation with research, please. Use the rubric and give us an update on how the PLCPB is working. That's the reading and the stuff for this week. You're supposed to read Bailey and Jakisic before the second meeting. Read Hattie and Clark before the third meeting, please. And there is a rubric video for the PLCPB over here in assessment, if you will check that out as well. PLCPB you should be working on, as well as the CDPB, and I hope you're making good progress on those. We'll talk about those projects when we get back together in February, and I hope that, again, you'll reach out to me if you have questions or concerns about those. I hope you have a great week. There's lots of reading and writing to do. There's work to do on your CDP and your PLCPB. Have a great week.